Everyone, am I audible?
You are.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. It is said that it is the era of many mini Indias. People today think global, live local, and consume content in their own dialect. In these times, we've seen that whether it is OTT, cinema, podcasts, name it, regional content seems to be doing really well. And the success of films like Beast, Kantara, RRR, KGF has been a testament to that. How many of you here have watched at least one film or any content in a web series maybe in a regional language this year? Green is, yes, at least one. Wow. Yeah, I can't see a single red, so I'm assuming that this just is a testament to that. Similarly, we've seen a trend with digital news as well. The need to stay abreast with local events has always kept regional news, has given an edge to regional news. But in the largely English-driven internet, we are seeing that the regional news platforms are now rising in popularity. So I'd like to ask, maybe Sudipto, you can start. And, if you could just help me understand the audience. There's a certain perception about the regional platform audience. They are an older audience, they live in tier 2, tier 3 cities. Can you help us understand the audience better?
Sure. Thank you, Benita afaqs, for inviting me in the event. So let me start by reiterating what you just mentioned, right? So from a regional audience TG perspective, so it is of course it has moved from just being core languages into tier 2, tier 3. Now we are seeing people coming from towns, villages. But yeah, I mean, in terms of penetration, India is still at about 47% internet penetration. So there is a lot to do with the infrastructure, but yeah, I mean, we are seeing audiences coming from there. Now, these are, from the strata perspective, I would say, or from the age perspective, I would say these are essentially Gen Z, which are now coming online. A lot of first-time internet users, probably. And while some of them are bilingual, multilingual, we are also seeing people who are natively speaking one language coming online and making some impact in terms of discovery. In terms of consumption, obviously, there's a fair share of non-news content being consumed, news to a certain extent, but a larger shift towards non-news. Videos and short-form videos are getting consumed more. So yeah, I mean, that's what we are looking at.
All right, but the national platforms are also attempting to reach this same audience. If Prasad, you can help us know what are the challenges in catering to the needs of this audience, and how are they different from the challenges of national platforms?
So when you say national platforms, right, news has always been a local medium. You have a Delhi edition of a newspaper, a Mumbai edition, and so on. To sort of distinguish that, and by nature of news, immediacy, geography, all of that plays into the relevance of the content matter. What so-called national platforms would struggle with is that where you've not had a traditional footprint, to build a footprint and then go on from there and to address that market specifically is always challenging. But that's true of anything, right? So if there was a media house that was working out of Kolkata, for example, and they wanted to enter the Chandigarh market, they would face the same problems as a media house working out of Delhi or Mumbai, wanting to enter, let's say, Chennai or Hyderabad. So to that extent, I think that the challenges are similar in moving geographies. The biggest challenge is to understand geographical realities in this country. They're very different. My consumption patterns for, let's say, Telugu news site could be remarkably different to a Bangla news site, could be remarkably different to an English news site. And those patterns, understanding those patterns and then catering to that audience is challenging. I mean, that's the main hurdle or obstacle that publishers need to overcome.
Rammohan sir, if you could help, if you could share the advertiser's perspective, which are the categories that prefer advertising here, and are their expectations different from regional platforms as compared to, like what he said, the so-called mainstream platforms?
Okay, first let's take a step back. The first thing that we need to understand is regional news is not about the language in which it is consumed, right? Most news, and I'm going to be very specific to news, most news channels or digital, whichever, I mean, wherever you consume today, there's very little differentiation in terms of platforms, because I believe in the next 5 years there'll be no CNS. But that story apart, you must understand that everything starts with something which is political in nature in the news genre. That's the first thing. Then comes crime. If you look at the sequence of events that happens, the most important news is, "Aaj Modi ne kya bola?" So if Narendra Modi is your point of contention and the whole of India is fighting that character, then it will always be national news. Whether it is consumed in Inadu, except for Sun TV, which I'll come to later, South Bay, I mean, except for Tamil Nadu, which behaves very differently. The rest of the places, there is no news. I mean, Gaay ne bachade ko janam diya is not news. But that is the kind of news that nobody wants to consume. Somebody said that that's entertainment, right? I mean, that's got no meaning. So the context is that till the time there is and 80% of our news is political, and therefore, till the time, because even a Bengal election is national news, right? Even if there is, even Himachal elections was a national news. Ideally, it should have been a regional story, right? But that's not the case. So anything in this country which is remotely government related, because most of it is, whether it's economics or otherwise, even a Shiv Sena BJP story, because BJP is so strong, and I'm not trying to make it political, but the reality is that. So that's where the first information majority lies in, right? When I say information majority, most of that consumption is what people are today consuming, irrespective of the medium that they consume it. And of course, there is this whole new enthusiast of sports, which is a different story. I mean, when I started reading newspaper, I used to read the last page first. Like, aaj to newspaper ghar mein aake 20 saal ho gaye, but I'm saying that's how the behavior was. So each consumer has a different behavior. So if you're saying that today, do I have a specific need, what are the kind of advertisers going to be on news channels? For me, news is reach, clearly on television, and impact on digital. So if I buy for any of our clients, and most clients are there's no specific category. Even in LIC, if it's got to do a campaign, or even if it is a Adani Wilmer, if it has to do a campaign, there will be a huge, page takeover on, let's say, HT or Times of India or any of these. Apart from the hajar other stuff that we do, which includes YouTube and all of the rest. Now, at that point in time, when it's impact, we're not talking of targeting and all that there. Specifically, when you go into future sustenance, that's when your targeting capabilities come into play. And then there are certain platforms which can deliver that well, and then certain platforms which can't deliver, right? They were discussing about CTV before this. Now, the story is that, if I'm going up, IPL is run on Hotstar. You don't have any other data but Hotstar. You got to take what they give, right? So if it's going to be running on, you take Google's data, so why can't you take Hotstar data? And if it is working for your advertisers, and the results show, why will they otherwise you keep getting advertised? We are one of the largest advertisers on IPL for the last 3 years now, right? On Hotstar. Now, why will we keep going back if it is not giving results, even after the increasing prices? Because there is no competition. Is there another event in this country which is as big as an IPL? No, period. So it's not. So the audience consumption depends on what you throw at them and at the time at which you want to throw at them. So short form stuff, because attention span of today's generation. Sorry, I'm taking a little bit longer than 30 seconds. India's population is, if you look at it, 65% of India's population is below the age of 35. And in that, 70% below the age of 30. Their attention span is 7 seconds. You've got to catch them in 7 seconds. So in that 7 seconds, short form is what will work. Whether news in short form, whether advertising in short form, or any other matter, everything has to be short form. Otherwise, it's not going to work, because you're not going to cater to the needs of the advertiser, and there's no time for the consumer to take anything further.
But how much of the campaigns that an advertiser reaches out to a regional platform is solely or exclusively for that platform, or is it generally like they're doing a national campaign, they're reaching out to national platforms, so a part of it they will reach out to a regional news platform as well?
No, so where is the growth coming for on the internet? It's from tier 2, tier 3 towns. And after the geo phenomenon in 2016, everything, every internet businesses in India is built on the back of Jio. And all of those growth is happening. There's a whole set of generation which is missed television in India. Right? I mean, you go back, you go to, I mean, you go and ask people in tier 2 towns, go to Aurangabad, there might be people who have never experienced their entertainment today is YouTube, and their entertainment is any of these other free apps where they get what they need to, right? That generation cannot afford a television in the first place.
Right.
And so for me, it doesn't matter as long as I get reach, because my objective at that point in time is to reach as many people as possible. So if I had to target, then like I said, then I'll specify मेरे को SEC में ये NCCS में ये audience चाहिए, उधर ही मुझे target करना. So it depends on how you want to do your campaign. So because it's news, I mean I'm not talking movies and I'm not talking anything. I'm just specifically saying news because that's the subject I thought we were talking. So.
All right. Prasad and Sudipto, if you can share your perspective with regard to video offerings. Reports suggest that the online video user base in the country has scaled to more than 350 million people. How has this growth impacted the video offerings of your digital platforms, regional digital platforms, the viewership and also the advertiser interest?
So, look, as 5 years ago, if we had this conversation and if we were typically planning to go into, let's say, a language like Bangla, I would have built a traditional website and gone a very traditional digital model, thought of on-ground campaigns, typically cribbed about not having a print or television footprint, and then worked from there, right? On today's date, when we plan, let's say, going into a state or a different language or state into language. Typically in India it becomes state into language, right? So then what you plan is actually a lot of the planning becomes video first. A lot of the content strategy becomes video first. Sure, you have your typical text and your website and so on. But a lot of the investments and disproportionate investment will go into making videos, distributing videos, and catering to videos for a particular state. Therefore, news gathering, and for anybody who does not have a television footprint, and for publishers here who don't have a television footprint, you'd realize that news gathering in itself is an exercise, right? Video news gathering in itself is an exercise where you have to sort of delve into an existing stringer network, try and get them to work for you. So that whole setup now becomes video first. Earlier it used to be that you used to have a stringer in a district who would send you some text, typically. Now you have video stringers who also send you text. Now whether they're sending you text, so text has become secondary in most cases of news gathering for us. And I think that's the change in sort of thought and planning and strategy that goes into it in serving content.
In the previous panel, Gaurav spoke about the challenge of monetization. If you could give your perspective on it.
Yeah, I think it's an established thing that for language play vis-a-vis English, the CPMs are any day, we are lower compared to an English audience CPM. To compound the problem, I think there are technologies at loggerhead, because what is now happening is, if you look at Google and Facebooks of the world, translation, AI coming into play, we still don't know whether, English translated content will get a better reach or discovery versus originally created a Telugu or a Tamil piece of content. And primarily the drivers for any language business have been these two fronts, right? So, and more specifically, if I were to steer the conversation on videos, every publisher in the country, large part of the consumption is happening on YouTube. We have not been successful in building our own platforms and building that sort of attraction of videos on our own platform. So to answer your question, I think, the advertiser problem is probably because of the disparity of English versus language CPMs. While there is a scale of audiences on the other side, the maturity of advertisers, they need to understand that this should happen at an ecosystem level, at a planner level, at every level in the pyramid, I would say.
Can I just add to that we've been, and I'm guilty of that, I have cited Bangla examples we've got into Bangla, Telugu, and Tamil, and so on. But if you're talking about Hindi, then that's a very different scale. And I think that ecosystem is substantially more mature today, both from a publisher's perspective and an advertiser's perspective. So if you're going into states where your primary mode of communication becomes Hindi, your primary news gathering mechanism becomes Hindi, then those systems are extremely evolved, and they are perhaps, monetization is poor, I would agree with Sudipto, but at that scale, you can still make monies and make a good business out of it. And there's every case to delve deeper into why we can't do it with other languages in a sharp manner. But Hindi gives you brilliant audience reach, and I think that is recognized across the board.
Right. With your video offerings, as you penetrate deeper into tier 1, tier 2 cities or rural areas, how will your content strategy change as you're reaching out to that audience?
So when we look at content strategy, typically newsrooms do not do tier 1, tier 2 segmentation, right? You start with a fairly broad canvas of saying, hey, this is the state, this is the language, these are your audiences, this is the audience mix we think we have a right to win in, therefore we are going for this. This is an audience set which are existing set of advertisers. These are the cohorts they would like to advertise in, and therefore we believe we can monetize that. That's how you build a business case. In that journey, with many places, we figured out that a lot of the growth which we would earlier see out of places like Lucknow and Bhopal have now migrated to much smaller towns, right? And in those towns also, the specific short video, for example, most of that growth is coming from tier 3 cities, not even tier 2 cities, right? Because, it's an audience where perhaps you've grown up holding that 6-inch screen in your hand, right? That's how you consume. You're biometrically tuned to that form of consumption. So to that extent, as we build and as we delve into new territories, we sort of learn, and with each state there is a slightly different learning that publishers have, and with different publishers it will be different, right? Because most publishers who have legacy businesses will have footprints in some states where they will be perceived as the brand standing for something, and having a slightly mature and older audience. But if you go into new virgin territory, your perception is going to be completely different, and I think people under 25 are willing to just try out anything they sort of stumble upon. And in that case, you can break through brand loyalties much easier and simpler, right? So that's been my experience.
But these areas also suffer from a bandwidth issue, right? Especially when it comes to video offerings. How do you overcome that?
So it's a hard one, Benita, and there's no right or wrong to it. Typically, if you were to ask me this question in the context of platform delivery, own platforms, and I were to, for a moment, disconnect myself from videos and probably address text, at a few years back in time, we were probably following a of optimizing for light performances, 2G audiences, and so on. But for videos, it's very difficult. I mean, videos, obviously, the ecosystem has evolved. I mean, there are multiple formats coming in. There are, better delivery rates in terms of technology which are enabling it, frame rates, compression tech, all that coming in. But overall, in the last 3 to 5 years, again, going back to my moot point that this is all centered around YouTube or Facebook or Insta, right? Now, O&O platforms, to a certain extent, some players have made a head start, and I think due credit to them. But will we be able to influence infrastructure? I don't think so. I think, like I said, everyone in the ecosystem needs to come together. With 5G now coming in, I am hoping that 4G and 3G adoption in the villages and towns, low cost smartphones again going there, Geo phones making a foray. I think, just connecting back to Shrikant's point, another 5 years down the line, we might just see that this might just be the next wave. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a technical challenge right now.
But beyond the major state languages, is there an attempt to reach out to the local dialects, like for example, Awadhi, Tulu, or Konkani for that matter?
There is, but we have largely not been very, very successful there for two reasons. I think one, there is on the supply side, you're finding it hard to, look at a Gen Z sort of an audience taking up that as a career opportunity or journalism in Konkani. It's very difficult. And to keep him aspirationally glued to that perspective is another challenge. Now, on the demand side, obviously there is a demand, and you see that in form of short video content. But then there is the other paradigm where anyone with a mobile phone becomes a content creator. And you are basically living in that era of fighting for viewership, news. What is it that you want to optimize for? So in our experiments, yes, there is a market for it. But I would say that in the overall schematics of language businesses, we are still a long way to go there and figure out the right monetization balance versus audience balance.
But why would you want to do Tulu? People who, there is no script. It's Kannada.
Video offerings.
No, I'm saying that audience understands Kannada also, because in Karnataka there are 5 languages. So the guys who speak Tulu, 100% know Kannada. Kannada speaking may not know Tulu, but Tulu speaking 100% know Kannada. Likewise, Marathi speaking will not know Konkani. Konkani speaking knows Marathi.
Right.
So, so if you have to attack a Konkani audience, they know Marathi.
No,
You can do Marathi videos there.
But if we are to, let's say, there are to be such platforms, what do you think about the monetization aspect? Will advertisers be interested?
Why would you want to create more cost and keep increasing supply? India is lopsided any which way. You got massive supply, there is no demand. Till the time we become some $10 trillion economy, your advertising story is not going to increase the way. It's all GDP connected, right? You can't suddenly expect that I supply kar dungi to yahan demand aa jayega. Nahi aayega waisa. So it has to be directly relevant.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no point.
Has HT Digital attempted anything on that side?
So where we have significant demand, for example, you would find that in Bhojpuri is one example that comes to mind, right? Where I can find both the talent and an audience for it, I will try and do that. And I will sort of, you're right, GDP, advertising monies are a function of GDP, yes. But I will hope at some point the advertising monies will flow in for the right audiences. However,
Bhojpuri is correct.
Correct.
So
But
much
I'm saying,
content is
so
consumed.
everybody who understands Bhojpuri will understand Hindi, and they were doing fairly well with the news requirements in Hindi. But Bhojpuri, I have the talent, I have the audiences, and therefore I can marry the two. For a Maithili or a Awadhi, I would sort of struggle for both. Maybe there are audiences, we haven't explored them as yet. But the talent is not available. So if I don't have content creators willing to create content in that dialect, right? And this has to be primarily audio video led, right? Dialect does not have written text to it. I will struggle to create content, right? So that's the balance of it.
All right. Does the audience have any questions? All right, that's it. Thank you so much. It was really interesting, the entire debate around regional news. Hopefully, we'll see more video offerings coming in 2023. Thank you.